Hi there, it's Katrin at 3Ps. I want to talk to you in this video about narcissism versus self-love, and I thought this was something which was very relevant if you are on this channel because you want to lift weights and you want to develop your body, because I think there's a lot of negativity around bodybuilding because people assume that if you're a bodybuilder you must be a narcissist. Now, I'm not saying that no bodybuilder is a narcissist, but I am saying that you can be a bodybuilder and not be a narcissist. So I want to just refer to three books which talk about narcissism and talk about self-love, just to have you think about the reasons why you are lifting weights, because I think it's important that if you are lifting weights, that you are also seeing this as part of a broader approach to life. I think, and I really believe, that if you bodybuild, it is a fantastic discipline for your life, provided you approach it from a broad context of I matter, not a broad I'm beautiful, no, not a narrow I'm beautiful just because I have developed my musculature attitude. So I wanted to start with a really fantastic book. There's an author called F. Scott Peck who wrote a book called The Road Less Travelled, and I'll put the details in the notes. And it was a real ground-changing book because it talked about why people get addicted to things and the personal journey that you need to go on to get to happiness. And it talked about the importance of spirituality in particular. He wrote a series of books after that, and the one that I'm going to refer to is actually called The Road Less Travelled and Beyond. And the reason I've chosen it is because there's a whole section on narcissism versus self-love. So I'm going to read a chunk from this book because I think it's really relevant here. And the point before I read it, the point that I'm trying to sort of bring up for you to think about is to what extent you approach life from a sort of rather surface narcissistic way, and to what extent you approach life, and in particular personal training, from a broader I matter but I'm not the centre of the universe and no one else matters type of attitude. And I think that's really important in terms of how you incorporate training in your life. So as I said, this book is called The Road Less Travelled and Beyond. It's by someone called F. Scott Peck, and I'll put the details in the notes, and I may actually on the website, my website, also put some links in so you can find this book. So let me just pick this book up and I'll just read this section to you. So what he says narcissism versus self-love. He says, we are confronted with a paradox. While growing out of narcissism, which is our self-centeredness and often excessive sense of importance, is more than anything else what life is about, it is equally vital that we also simultaneously learn to come to terms with just how important and valuable we are. Humility means having true knowledge of oneself as one is. In my opinion, it is critical for us to be realistic about ourselves as we are, and be able to recognise both the good and bad parts of ourselves. But that does not mean, as many falsely conclude, that we should give more emphasis to the negative parts of who we are and downplay or altogether dismiss the good parts as secondary. Yet many do so, trying to display a pseudo-humility that may extend to an inability to receive compliments or assert oneself when appropriate to do so. Further, there is a distinction to be made between self-love, which I propose is always a good thing, and self-esteem, which I propose can often be questionable. As I wrote in Further Along the Road Less Travelled, which is another of his books, the two are often confused because we do not have a rich enough vocabulary to cover these phenomena. I hope that eventually the problem will be resolved by developing new words that are more adequate, but for the moment we are stuck with the old ones. For example, there are times when we act in ways that are unbecoming. If we deny that our behaviour is bad and fail to seek ways to correct it or to redeem ourselves by learning from what we have done wrong, then we are primarily concerned with self-esteem. On the other hand, if we are operating from a sense of self-love, the healthier thing to do would be to acknowledge our mistakes and chastise ourselves if we must, as well as have the ability to discern that our failure at any given moment does not totally define our worth or who we are as a person. We need moments that we realise that we do not have it all together and that we are not perfect. Such moments are crucial to our growth because loving ourselves requires the capacity to recognise that there is something about us we need to work on. So there is a difference between insisting that we always feel good about ourselves, which is narcissistic and synonymous with constantly preserving our self-esteem, and insisting that we regard ourselves as important or valuable, which is healthy self-love. Understanding and making this distinction is a prerequisite for mature mental health. In order to be good, healthy people, we have to pay the price of setting aside our self-esteem once in a while and not always feeling good about ourselves, but we should always be able to love and value ourselves, even if we shouldn't always esteem ourselves. So that's what F. Scott Peck says, and he's a very eminent psychiatrist. And I think how that applies to training and training your body is really important because, as I said, a lot of criticism, of meatheads, people in the gym who just, strut about is that they are narcissistic, which means that they consider themselves to be the most important people in the room. They don't care about other people. They think they're perfect. There's nothing that needs to change. Now, I think that is a real misjudgment of people who pump iron, because actually, I think if you ask most, really good bodybuilders, they will say that they're never satisfied with themselves. They're always looking to improve, and that would be the opposite of being a narcissist. If I go back to one of my heroes, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he always had a challenge to train his calves. He wasn't able to naturally get size in his calves. So what he did was he cut off the legs of his training pants so that he could see his calves whenever he trained. And the reason he did that was that he could remind himself that that's something he needed to work on. So that is the opposite of narcissism. That is about saying, I think I need to improve. So, that's the first point I'd make, is that if you train, you are not necessarily a narcissist. And if you are someone who really trains to a high level, you are almost certainly not a narcissist. I think the misunderstanding comes from the fact that we use mirrors to lift weights. But that's not because we are admiring ourselves, it's because we're using mirrors to check our form. You wouldn't normally say to a ballet dancer who also train in front of a mirror, you are a narcissist because you train in front of a mirror. So I think that, the next time you're told you must love yourself because you train in front of a mirror in the gym, you just need to explain, or even suggest they go out and buy this book. But you can certainly say to them that does not make you a narcissist. Now the next book I wanted to just take a quote from is one of my favourites, which is called The Wisdom of Mike Mentzer. And as I said, look, it's quite a 70s photo, it's quite Burt Reynolds. But this guy is a really interesting bodybuilder. He had a training regime which I don't necessarily think now would sustain, which is this idea that you take every rep to the max, and which is great maybe if you're 18 and you've not got any issues around injuries, but it's a bigger issue as you get older because you can injure. But what he says about how you see training as part of your life is really important. And there was a piece in this book that I thought was really relevant when we're talking about the issue of, if you're a bodybuilder, are you a narcissist? So this is I just wanted to read. First of all, I'd just show you the picture. I think that's classic. See, there we go. Bodybuilders do read. If people think they're all complete meatheads, bodybuilders do read. Okay, so what he says is, the goal of a rational bodybuilder should be to fully actualize his potential as a human being, not simply his physical, i.e. muscular potential, but his intellectual and spiritual development as well. After all, the body as such includes not merely the muscles, but also the brain and sense of self that attends using both efficaciously. Focusing so obsessively on only one aspect of this triumvirate will result in, at best, a lopsided development of one's human stature. And I'm sorry, but the quest for bodybuilding immortality is the hitching of your wagon to a falling star, a moment in geologic time where the champions of 30 years ago, or of 20 years ago, or 5 years ago. No longer do they grace the covers of the industry's magazines, no longer do they endorse the latest products. Occasionally they will attend the odd bodybuilding contest, but where every 3 years or so they are paraded out en masse for the fans to reassure them that there actually is a history in the sport. But then they disperse into the background like the wake behind a ship, waiting for the next event in which they might receive some acknowledgement. From what heights the mighty have fallen. Those who focus solely on their muscles or the trophies they win for developing their muscles never grow as human beings. They fail to develop any attribute that is not related to bodybuilding, and their resulting perception of their entire identity as confined to what they do or did, as opposed to involving who they are or what their achievements still beckon them further ahead in life's path. Such individuals want so badly to have external acceptance and recognition to touch that flame of public adulation and momentary glory that they seldom realise as they draw closer to the flame, it will invariably consume them whole. Incidentally, I say momentary deliberately, as anything that depends on popular support from magazine exposure to bodybuilding championship victories is never immune from the vicissitudes of change. At some point, they must be aware of the transitory nature of their bodybuilding careers and conclude that rather than develop other interests so they can continue to grow as human beings, for example, writing, music, painting, philosophy, literature, or learning a true new trade or craft, they must direct their efforts to zealously guarding their small, dissolving fiefdom, lest a more worthy or enduring figure might arrive on the scene. So that is Mike Mentzer, and he's, as you can see, clearly top flight bodybuilder, but he was very, very, very clear that it cannot be the sole goal in life. If what it is, you're going to become very, very unhappy because it is a momentary thing. A friend of mine who I trained with early on when I was lifting weights, who was a very, very good bodybuilder, he said to me, he'd won British Championships. He said to me, he's got those trophies, but what are they worth now? That was a moment in time. And actually, to get those trophies, he took a lot of steroids. And as a result, he's messed his back up because he was lifting very, very heavy in a way that physically wasn't sustainable. And he's now in his mid-30s, had to have a number of operations on his back. He's to extent, he's disabled by his bodybuilding career. So what I'm saying to you is that when you approach bodybuilding, it is a noble sport. It is a noble aim to want to be the best you can be physically, but it cannot be the only side of your person that you develop. And Mike Mentzer, as I said, was really clear about that. And F. Scott Peck, which is the previous book I just read, was really clear about that having a goal that is purely narcissistic about how you are and what you are about, and ignoring other parts of yourself, that supports something called self-esteem, which is not sustainable. You need to have self-regard and value for yourself and believe that you matter and believe that developing is important because learning and growing is important. But you cannot simply ignore the other parts of your life, okay? So that's my ethos and what I would encourage you. And it may not be the message you want to hear, particularly if you are, you're just starting your career, you're a guy in your teens or your 20s and it's all about getting big. Great, but I'm just trying to maybe suggest on the way to that greatness that you think about other parts you develop. Again, I'll go back to my, one of the guys, I think there's a great example of having a broader set of goals, which is Arnold Schwarzenegger. While he was at the top of his game as a bodybuilder, he was also taking business classes. He already knew that he wanted to develop other parts of himself, not just his musculature, and he was taking business classes. He then took acting classes. There's a good picture of him at one of the Miss Universe contests, and he's being visited by the director of one of his very early films because he was still competing at a very high level as he was getting into the movies. So he was never single track. He never thought that becoming a bodybuilder, becoming a champion was all that he could achieve. He always felt there were no other things he could achieve. Okay, so that's the second book I wanted to mention. The last one I wanted to mention is a book called The Mastery of Awareness. It's Living the Agreements, and it's got a sort of quite sort of psychedelic cover. This is I think a really brilliant book if you're looking to looking at personal happiness, looking at your personal journey. This book was written by a guy called Donna Bernadette Vigil. He's South American. It's about sort of South American shamanism. So it's about the sort of spirituality, but it has a lot to say about discipline. And when people throw at me, you guys just go and spend all your time in the gym and you don't develop yourself otherwise. Well, number one, I disagree with that, and it's certainly not true in my case. But number two, the discipline that you have to become a great bodybuilder is discipline that is valuable in all areas of your life. And this book, I just want to read a section which talks about discipline, because I think it's one of the things that you can be proud of, not in a self-esteem sense, but in a self-regard sense. And it's one of the things you can counter, or you should counter, any urge in yourself to just simply think of bodybuilding in terms of the external, because actually when you do lift weights with commitment, you are developing a very important side of yourself, which is the discipline side. So I just wanted to read from this book. Okay, so this section is called Discipline, and it says, awareness helps you to create discipline, which is the second agreement of the spiritual warrior. So it's to do with the rest of the book. Anyway, When you have enough awareness to realize that this path is what you want to do, then discipline is the process that helps you follow through with this choice. Discipline allows you to respect your words so much that you will follow through on the action associated with your word. Whatever you say you are going to do, you complete your word one step at a time with discipline. Discipline is very important for all levels of the spiritual warrior, but especially the beginning of the spiritual warrior. As a beginning spiritual warrior, you might make too many promises or set too many goals for yourself. As a result, you might not be fully focused on each goal, and you might not follow through on it. Discipline helps you start one goal and complete it. It assists you in being 100% focused and giving it all you've got. After you will master discipline enough, you will be able to do two things simultaneously and give each of them 100%. As a beginning spiritual warrior, who makes a commitment to look at yourself, you need a lot of discipline to stick with the process. After a while, you may start to feel tired of working a certain way, or you may not want to look at a certain wound. It is easier to walk away than to follow through on your word of commitment. It takes a lot of discipline to break old patterns. Discipline is really about making a choice to take action to go forward 100%. No matter what is presented, discipline gives you the willpower to overcome any boulders that are in your path. Discipline guides you to embrace the boulders for a while and then to walk over them. Discipline is about respecting your word, knowing you are connected to the source, and realizing that you can embrace, overcome, and heal any wound. So I think that's a tremendous piece from that book. And it explains why discipline is so important in all areas of life, because discipline is about keeping your word to yourself, and that is about developing proper self-regard. I think it's an area where a lot of people, there's an internal critic going on in your head saying, I can't do this. It's sabotaging you. It's saying, I can't lose weight. I can't train 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week. I can't build muscle. I can't master this new skill, whatever it may be. That voice is silenced by discipline, because discipline says, I will keep my word to myself. I will keep my commitments. There's another video on this channel about setting goals, and setting goals is meaningless without discipline, because discipline is what makes you keep your commitment to yourself. And I would say to you that if you are a bodybuilder, if you are training and you're trying to build your body, that discipline is essential to make that a reality. But discipline is also something which will give you massive overspill into other areas of your life, because if you can exercise the discipline to transform your body, you will realize you can exercise the discipline to achieve absolutely anything. And the last comment I wanted to make on that was that I think one of the saddest things that you see is people who say, I can't. And as that piece from that book says, discipline can overcome any boulder. It can get around any obstacle. If you say, I can, you will. So on that note, on that tremendously positive note, those are 3 books which I think are really good books to look at if you're looking to develop your thinking around bodybuilding and understanding what bodybuilding can actually add to the whole of your life. They're also great to throw back at people who say bodybuilders are just meatheads, because we are not. Many of us are much more than that. And in terms of the development of your life, bodybuilding is an incredible way to sort of exercise some of the key skills you need to fulfill your potential in your life. So on that massively positive note, I hope that you like the video. If you do, please give me a like. Please do share this for other people who are struggling with discipline or positivity or commitment. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them under this video. You can also email me. I'm at hello@3pspublishing.com. That's hello@3pspublishing.com. My name is Catherine Turner. I'm a personal trainer. 3Ps is all about fitness, health and resilience. Have a fantastic day. It's been a privilege. Thank you for your time. Bye.